We're back. If President Obama nominates former Senator Chuck Hagel of Nebraska for the next Secretary of Defense, he could find himself with a tough political fight on his hands. Take a look at this new ad from a pro-Israeli group.
Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel? President Obama says he supports sanctions on Iran. Hagel voted against them. Hagel voted against labeling Iran's Revolutionary Guard a terrorist group. And while President Obama says all options are on the table for preventing a nuclear Iran, Hagel says military action is not a viable, feasible, responsible option. President Obama, for Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel is not a responsible option.
Well, the New Yorker magazine's Ryan Lizza tweeted this week, quote, "The coming attacks on Chuck Hagel will make the Susan Rice episode seem quaint." Well, those attacks have already started. One senior Republican aide told the Weekly Standard, that's a neocon magazine, which I am to read every week, quote, "Send U.S. Hagel, and we will make sure every American knows he's an anti-Semite." Wow. Well, the anti-Semitism charge stems from comments Hagel made back in 2008 in an interview with an author about the power of AIPAC, a major pro-Israeli lobbying group. Hagel said he was a strong supporter of Israel, but also said, quote, "The Jewish lobby intimidates a lot of people up here." He's meaning Congress. I'm a United States senator. I'm not an Israeli senator. Well, many people have defended Senator Hagel's potential nomination. He's a Vietnam vet, Purple Heart recipient. His views on foreign policy are far from being outside the mainstream. So what is really motivating his critics? Jack Reed's a Democratic senator from Rhode Island, and Dana Milbank is a columnist for the Washington Post. Senator Reed, one of our producers who's pretty sharp said that Chuck Hagel is Barack Obama with a war record, that they think very much alike, except one guy's got a couple of Purple Hearts to prove he knows what battle and war is all about. Your thoughts, how would you size them up as a former colleague ideologically in terms of peace and war issues?
Well, first of all, Chris, you've pointed out, this is someone who's been in combat, who's received 2 Purple Hearts. Instantaneously, the men and women in the armed forces will know that at the top of the Pentagon is someone that has literally walked in their boots, that experiences has experienced what they experience, and that, I think, is a huge asset that he brings. As far as his foreign policy credentials go, he has been a very thoughtful and very constant observer of shifting foreign policies all across the globe, not just in one area. But I think the most compelling comments referencing Israel, 9 former U.S. ambassadors, including some who are our ambassador to Israel, say their dealings with him show he's a strong supporter of Israel, as we should be. They are our most important ally in that region.
Well, let's go to the neocons who I tend to go to battle with because I think they always liked the Iraq War. I always hated it. I wonder about this insistence why we have to be so militarized as a country, so insist on using our battlefield strength as our first diplomatic move. Hagel's not of that belief. He's one of these guys like Anwar Sadat, like Yitzhak Rabin, who've been to war, know what it looks like, and would prefer an alternative.
Right. He's a foreign policy realist, which used to be quite a dominant strain here. And I think a lot of the reason the neocons are opposed to him now is because he was President Bush's most strident critic, certainly within the Republican Party, an adamant critic of the war. And he just has the view that war is actually your last option. It's not something you do because he fought and bled.
What percentage,
for the country.
you're a journalist, you're a great columnist, what percentage of the American people, when they think about it, think that the Iraq War was necessary? That it was the move we had to make to cost all those lives?
Well, certainly the polls show that the vast majority did not think it was necessary in the end. Now, Chuck Hagel is not some sort of a dove. He voted to go into Iraq. He voted for Afghanistan, the conflicts in the Balkans. But he believes in multilateral action. That's why he's opposed sanctions against Iran when it's unilateral sanctions, because he says that doesn't work. It needs to be done in concert with the world community.
Well, let me ask you, Jack Reed, Senator, what do you think about this? Do you think there's any chance the president has considered this fella and would pull him back because of the level of criticism that's come so far? Is this enough to make the president change his mind about somebody he believes in and shares the views of?
Well, the president will ultimately make the judgment about who he sends up here, but I think he would be on strong ground if he's sent up Chuck's name. Chuck is quite prepared to answer all these questions. They're all questions that should and could be asked. But again, as Dana said, this is someone who has a very sound, realistic view of foreign policy, of military policy, based upon his one experience as a soldier himself, 2, his experience in the Senate dealing with his issues. So I think he brings great credibility, great integrity to the office. And by the way, the foreign policy of the United States is not set by the Secretary of Defense. He will be carrying out the foreign policy of the President of the United States, and he'll be giving him the military options, but he'll be giving him those options with, I think, the hardest and closest scrutiny, because he understands ultimately young Americans have to carry the battle, not a lot of people who are commentating on his credibility today.
Sure, the armchair generals, but I don't like chicken hawks either. The guys are the hawkiest people in the world. Most hawkiest people in the world would never think of putting a uniform on. But here's the question about this. What I was so stirred by when I read his comment, when he was being medevaced in Vietnam, and he's lying there wounded, ready to be picked up, I guess put on a helicopter, he remembers thinking at that time, I've got to do everything I can when I get back to the States to make sure that war is a last resort, not a first resort. Having been and you've been in the military, does that sound like something that would drive a man into his public life afterwards? That experience of being wounded in battle and seeing the suffering in battle that's just worse than your own suffering would drive your political and public career thereafter?
Well, I was not in combat. I served 12 years in the United States Army. I'm a paratrooper and ranger, but Chuck Hagel has been in combat. I'm sure it has left a distinct impression on him. As Dana pointed out, he did support the efforts in Iraq, but he didn't do it unquestioningly. He didn't do it without raising questions, continually asking for better policy, more answers. And that's what I think you want in someone who might be the Secretary of Defense. And this is perhaps coincidental, but another great warrior, Senator Dan Inouye, who we're laying to rest today, and a Medal of Honor winner, was also a critic of Iraq, because I think he, not just in this one vote, but through his entire career, understood the suffering and the sacrifice that young Americans make on behalf of this country and must make.
Let's talk about the Israeli lobby, which is a strong lobby. We know that, and it's properly called the Israeli lobby. They're very concerned about the security of Israel. We write about it, we talk about it, we know the people are in it. It seems to me the question is, to some extent, the degree to which you're willing to be critical of the current Israeli government, whether it's a right-wing government like Netanyahu or not. Right. Some people will be more unquestioning in their support of bills. Others would say, well, in this issue, like invading Lebanon wasn't the smartest move in the world. Where'd you put Hagel on that one?
Well, I think where Chuck Hagel got in trouble was one remark when he referred to the Jewish lobby instead of the Israel lobby.
And why is that wrong? Explain to the viewers.
Because a lot of the pro-Israel lobby are conservative
Christians. They're right-wing
And
Christians.
a lot of American Jews are quite liberal and are not necessarily
I am very aware of both differences, and I'm glad you said it.
So he misspoke, and he said that he misspoke.
And by the way, it was in the context of other times in that same article where he said the Israeli lobby over and over again. So he got it right, and we have to get it right. Anyway, thank you, Dana Milbank, a great columnist. And thank you, Senator Jack Reed, for joining us tonight. Chris. We're going to be right back.